So lugs, I wanted some lugs and I wanted copper ones and I needed them like yesterday, so I wasn't going to wait for them to be delivered. You can pick them up quite cheaply from some places, but then you've got the delivery costs on them and stuff. Other times you can get them from eBay, but they can tend to be quite expensive sometimes for what they are. So I decided to make some, and that's what we're going to be doing right now.
So each lug we're going to want about 5 centimeters.
So I've been wanting to do this video for a little while now. I've had to do a few little lugs here and there and I've put them together.
Next we're going to cut halfway along here. So now this bit's reasonably important. When you bend this bit, you want to bend it so the cut is on the side like yay. One of these cut down the middle and bent in the middle rather than to the one side, just to see.
So I found using the mole grips is actually a little bit easier to start off the bends and everything.
The only one caveat is by doing it that way around is when you do punch through the back, you tend to punch through where your split, where your cut was. See how much we're bending first, and we're just going to bend a good sized nugget onto there. And as you're doing that, this will open up, and then that will allow you to put your wire in and almost crimp it in and around. Just check for measurements, might just want to bend that in a bit more. So I've kind of bent about half of that. Remove any plastic shielding. This is quite, you can see it's already got a bit of corrosion on there. But don't worry about that too much because it's only going a short path, so the resistance is going to be fairly low. What we're going to do now is make one. Obviously, if you're going to do the other end as well, you're going to make sure you've got some heat shrink on if you're going to heat shrink it. Get a nice tight fit in there. And what we're going to do is clamp this bit in, hold it, so it's that way, start this turning on here.
So what we're going to do is kind of just like fold it, bend it, push it in, fold it, bend it, push it in and crimp it sort of thing. Using mole grips is actually a bit easier than using vice, but especially when you're trying to video it as well.
One at the top. There we go, and everyone done it.
I definitely recommend doing this bit and feeding the solder in through the holes. Let's just pierce ideally through the first layer.
A bit of fluxy in there.
So yeah, definitely heat up the end first, otherwise you sort of heat up your pipe or your cable too much. Heat from the ends, work its way in, put in the flux or put in the solder, let that work its way through. Doesn't really matter if it goes through all the way.
And this one I'll try and do without a vice, just if you had some mole grips or something. Don't know how it's going to work out.
Again, it's the same sort of principle. You're sort of like pushing it in around the cable, tightening it up, and then bringing the other bit around. Here we do actually need like something like a vise that's got a bit of a gap just to put the punch through, just so it pierces through the copper so you can put the solder in there. Same gist, just heat up from the outside, work your way in, feed it in. Does quite a nice little tidy job.
There's obviously another way of doing it, and that's to cut your little lip down here, and then you can roll that around. I'll show you that.
Yeah, like I say, just do this with the 22mm. You'd normally cut this before crimping the ends, but there's no point doing it for the 15 really. It just makes more of a mess and gives like an open end to it all, sort of thing. Horses for courses though, if that's what you want to do, you can do it if you want.
See, because you then tend to have your slot looks a bit more square rather than it being sort of rounded. But then, you know, you've got an open end, like water could get in there, you could argue that. It all just depends whether you want to do that extra cut, and sometimes when you do this one it can actually tear down there a bit more. And then also the other reason why I don't like the ones where you cut them down the middle is because then you still got this open bit where that sort of will go in. Even if you manage to cover that, you just prefer them when they're a bit more smoother like that, to be honest with you. They just sort of look a bit better on this bit here. I think because this was 22mm pipe, so I kind of had to cut a bit in there so that that would then wrap around. And the bigger bit could be about 50mm. So we're going to go in about 20mm and just make a mark. Just a little soft mark in there. Next we're going to cut down there about halfway across that line to like make a T.
You wrap in like a 22mm pipe around something that's what, 8mm?
So down to about halfway. So once you've got these bits here, sometimes a little good idea just to put this bit in the vise and just tighten it up, just so then it starts to go inside. And that's got a little bit of movement, but that is relatively tight. Just like that. So that is quite secure, but we're gonna put a little solder in there, heat that up, and dab that with solder as well.
Yeah, I found the best way is to solder through the punch rather than trying to dip it in through the inside and everything. Like this is just using rubbish cheap solder anyway, but just, yeah, best using the punch method.
Then obviously we need to just flatten this, and I'm just going to flatten it the same way that is. I mean, you could, I suppose you could flatten it a different way, but then you might then start deforming this bit.
This bit's really important.
Flatten it the same way that was flattened.
Do not do it this way.
Oh, you arsehole, look what I've done there. No, you didn't want to do that.
Basically, as the metal's like crimped down, it's sort of torn.
Take two on that bad boy. So then when you flatten this bit, you want to try and flatten it across the flat of what you had without deforming this bit. Then it won't cut away from you or tear. If you do it the other way, you'll be tearing off the bit along where you cut. You might have to go backwards and forwards a few times. You can tidy up other bits, but what you don't want is it start tearing. If you just go that way, around this bit, it will then start tearing. So what you want to gently do, is get that bit nice and flat. And then we can pinch in these ends here and here, but then you've still got this bit across here that gives you connection. If you go the other way, you can actually just then snap it off. Next, just going to clean up all this old dirty old flux on there, anything loose. This is actually water soluble flux. Got a bit of break. Clean on there will do the job.
So I couldn't be asked to change the belt speed on this thing, and when you're going slow it sort of catches. You got to mind your fingers on that as well, because the thing just spins around and goes flying off. This is actually like a wood sander sort of bit on there, but it does good for copper and all sorts. Clean it up with like a cheapo Brillo pad.
Also, if you've got
a bit of deburring going on there,
say some bits from drilling, just run a Stanley blade around there. I'll just smooth
this
out
is actually the better method in a way. Well, kind of, depending on what you're doing. For copper, it's probably better using the Stanley blade. But if you use a drill bit that's oversized, that can sort of get rid of deburring as well.
Check for fitment. Might just want to smooth these out, obviously, if they don't fit 100%.
That's it. Boom.